your olfactory bulbs, your optic nerves. Then you're going to have your ocular motor, which are going to be the flat ones that kind of resemble rubber bands. Your trochlear nerves are going to be down in the trench, so you're going to find that down in between the area of the cerebrum and the cerebellum. The trigeminal nerves are going to resemble pencil erasers, and they're going to be on the sides of the cerebellum, on either side. And then your adducens are very small. You can see that right there on the top of the pons before the medulla. Those two are your adducens nerves. From the back side, what else do you need to know? The cerebral peduncles are these two lumpy masses right before the pons, in between the pons and the optic chiasm, the hypothalamus, and the mammillary bodies are here. And
that's between the V.
The V is the cerebral peduncle. The mammillary body is in between the V. Hypothalamus is just above it. And then your optic chiasm is in the middle.
And we can remember it by OHM, O-H-M.
Let's see. The back of the brain, you get your pons, which is the lump, the medulla, and then the brain stem, the core. I think that's it as far as the outside goes. When you flip over, the questions he might ask from the top of the brain are to name a bump or a lump. So any of these bumps or lumps would be known as gyrus. The actual slit or the groove between the gyrus is going to be the sulcus. And he'll ask general regions as far as the cerebrum, which is the big part of the brain, and the cerebellum, which is the little brain. And then he may ask which hemisphere, and depending if the right or the left hemisphere. So you're going to want to know the cerebrum has two hemispheres, and the cerebellum is the little brain in the back.
There are some that differentiate the longitudinal and transverse fissures.
The longitudinal fissure is going to be the long one down the center of the brain. The transverse fissure is going to be this cross-section that separates the cerebellum and the cerebrum. The dura mater, which is going to be the hard covering that you remove, the questions he might ask you pertaining to the dura mater is name the lining or the covering. He'll ask you to locate the pituitary gland, which is the tan peanut inside of the dura mater. He may ask you to name the falx cerebrum, which is the spiny part of the dura mater that runs inside the longitudinal fissure, which is this part right here. And the tentorium cerebelli, which is going to be the V shape. And that's going to be what's tucked in near the cerebrum and the cerebellum. So it tucks into here, and that's the tentorium cerebelli. The other parts are going to be the inside. He may ask you to locate the tectum in two different ways. The tectum is going to be either in between the four lumps and bumps in between the cerebellum and the cerebrum. I'm going to point it down in this. There you go. And there's going to be four lumps, two round and two flat. Or he could ask you to locate it from the midsection. And the tectum and the midsection, just look for the cerebellum, cerebrum, and it's going to be the lumps in between the two. Okay, inside the brain, he's going to ask the ventricles. So you need to know the lateral ventricle, which is the horn-shaped. It has a ceiling and a floor. So it's going to be this ventricle here. It's going to run along the top. It has a ceiling, which is the corpus callosum, and it has a floor, which is a fornix. The material inside of the ventricle, that little tiny piece, that's considered a choroid plexus, and it's going to be inside any of the ventricles, but typically the lateral ventricle is the one he pulls it from for the test. The third ventricle is a slit like below the floor, around the ball, which is the intermediate mass. So this area here, this is the intermediate mass. This is the fornix. So this slit-like, almost comma-shaped, is going to be the third ventricle. And that runs more in the middle of the brain. The fourth ventricle is a triangular shape at the base of the cerebellum, which you follow the cerebral aqueduct, which goes. The cerebral aqueduct is going to be underneath the tunnel underneath the tectum. Just think of that. The tunnel under the tectum runs down to the fourth ventricle, which is at the base of the cerebellum. And what did he say? Think of it as the fourth ventricle waters the tree of life. So he says the cerebellum represents the arbor vitae, which translates to tree of life. So the fourth ventricle waters the tree of life. Okay, so those are your ventricles, the corpus callosum, the fornix.
Can we do the peduncles?
Yes, the cerebral peduncles are going to be from a view like this, most typically. Here's your optic chiasm, here's your hypothalamus, mammillary bodies. The cerebral peduncles are the lumps that surround that. And right on top of the cerebral peduncles is going to be the ocular motor nerves. So the ocular motor nerves, if you can locate those, right underneath it is the cerebral peduncles.
And did we mention the pineal gland?
Pineal gland? No, we didn't. Okay, an easy way, he said, to find the pineal gland is the small lump or bump, and it's pine cone shaped, and he said just think of it as tip. If you can locate these three things, you locate the tectum, which is here, the intermediate mass, which is here, the pineal gland is going to be in between the two, and it's just a pine cone shape. I'm trying to locate it here. Let's see if I can find it on this one. The tectum. It's really hard to see in that. I'm sorry. There it is. Okay, so you got your tectum, your intermediate mass. In between the two is this shape, like a pine cone triangular shape, and that is the pineal gland, right there. So your tectum, intermediate mass, and in between the two is the pineal gland. So TIP, tectum, intermediate mass, pineal gland.